Let's get started. Jon, great seeing you, and
Sure.
all of you, welcome to this launch event for Favro Relations and Agile Dependencies. So, the reason why we've been spending, quite a bit of energy on these things, and to be honest, Favro in general, it's basically, this trend. When we started Favro, what we saw was that agility or agile methods was crossing over into all kinds of teams, marketing and operations and management teams, basically everyone. So this was very much driven before by opportunity that the companies that were able to be agile across their whole organization, to have a high level of business agility and adapt to changes in the market, they will basically have a competitive advantage and they will be winners in the market. So it was very opportunity driven. So this was a strong trend already before. But what happened then with COVID was that a lot of companies were forced to work remotely. So basically what we call working from everywhere, and what we see now is that companies continue to do this kind of hybrid way of working also after COVID, and it looks like this is basically the future. And the thing is that one of those key things for those companies that wanted that high level of business agility to be more competitive before, is to have very autonomous teams that can operate in an autonomous way, and they would align towards the company goals. And when you have people working from anywhere, it's the same thing. You really need that. It's extremely painful to manage teams if they're not autonomous and they're working from anywhere kind of setting. So this is something that's been going from very opportunity driven to now being both opportunity but also simply necessity. So the big question then is, well, how do you actually do this? And in one way, this is relatively well understood. You need to have that autonomy and alignment at the same time. So this have consequences for leadership, for how you structure your organization into those autonomous teams. You need to have much more decentralized processes, etc. And companies are step by step becoming pretty good at this. Some much better than others, but it's pretty clear where things are going. But the problem is that tools haven't really followed. If you look at tools here, you have the whole kind of old category of tools up here. So basically the previous generation of tools, where everything basically becomes a ticket. And this has worked fantastic in the past. I mean, this is basically Taylorism, ideas that goes back to 1910. And for older kinds of organizations, this way of shopping everything into tickets and then managing those tickets very often in a very, very centralized way has been working fine. But the problem is that in the more agile way of working, you actually want to bring people together around the work that you're working on. So it's almost like the opposite. It's more like pulling people and teams together around creating value rather than shopping everything into tickets. And this is again well understood from kind of a leadership and process point of view. But these tools from basically the previous generation of tools, they they are not designed for this in a good way. And this is problematic because it creates what I call organizational gravity, pulling you back into that kind of old way. So you might be doing a lot of things right in the organization, but the problem is that you'll be pulled back into some of those old things. And then you have a category of newer tools. You have the Monday, ClickUp, etc. These kind of players here that are very nicely polished. They're very kind of consumerized in how the interface works. But the issue here is that the principles, basically the feature design is the same. So it's not really different from those previous tools. It's the same kind of features. It's just in a newer and nicer package. So what we thought was that, well, we need to design something with these principles of bringing people together around increments of value at an enterprise scale, and that really boils down into the kind of collaborative planning that Favro is designed for. And we have done this for a while now. So the thing which is new now with Favro Relations is how we visualize this, so it becomes much more clear. So I'm going to clear that, and we're going to just move on here to the next slide, and the final one before going into some practical things. So this is basically what organizations are trying to do. They want to move from kind of a traditional command and control structure into this kind of business agility with these autonomous teams. So the question now is that, well, if you're one of these teams here, how do you know my work, how is that connected to everything else? Because if we're saying that this team is going to be autonomous, they also need to themselves align with each other towards those company goals, instead of this being something centralized or top down. And to do so, you need to at any time see, okay, the thing I'm working on right now, the thing we're working on here, how does that connect to everything else? So the team themselves can align and collaborate. So with that said, we're going to look at that in practice now with Favro Relations. So over to you, Jon.
Thank you, Patrick. So yeah, for those of you who don't know, that's Patric Palm, CEO and one of the founders of Favro. I'm Jon Leslie, Agile coach at Cove Insights. We're a Favro Agile partner. So to show you some practical examples, the new Favro Relations, I'm going to show you from a marketing team's perspective how this would be beneficial to them. So first of all, we're going to be focusing on this marketing team board for maybe one of their sprints, looking at this new product launch page card in particular. All right, so that particular card originated in this backlog, this marketing backlog, and this expandable and collapsible pane over here on the left. And it's been committed to the sprint. It's making progress. It's currently in doing. If I open up this card, you can see this is the new Favro Relations, expandable and collapsible panel up here at the top. Now, there's a lot of information here, right? And this is when Patrick talks about bringing people together to collaborate on an increment of value as opposed to spreading them apart with a lot of tickets. This is exactly what we're talking about. So the cards in Favro can live in multiple places at the same time. So to be able to visualize that, that's where relations come in. And this new relations pane, we can see now, if we mouse over, maybe this had a parent in the backlog. So this was broken down from a launch campaign. This is one of the deliverables necessary for that campaign to be completed. So here you can see, when we mouse over, you can actually see that parent card, some of the data on the card, relations even on that card. I can click this, go to that parent in the backlog and that backlog board. And I could even open up the parent card in line here. Now, the next column, boards, you can see that, yes, this is from the backlog perspective, that backlog, because the boards can exist in multiple places, exists in 7 different collections. So that backlog board is visible across multiple teams of teams, and even in product dashboards like this one. Now, from a backlog status perspective, we can see that this card was sprint ready. That's why it was committed to the sprint. We can also see, as we already saw, that this is on a marketing, it's on a marketing sprint board for this particular marketing team. And that marketing sprint board exists here at the team level. It's also in a marketing director dashboard and also in a product dashboard. And we can see that the status from that team level perspective is currently doing. Now, this card also exists on a roadmap, and we can see that from a roadmap perspective, it's targeted for Q1, Q1. And we can see that very visually up here on this board. So now I'm going to take this card for the sake of example and say maybe this new product launch needs work from another team, right? So maybe an IT team or development team needs to do something from a technology standpoint to enable this new product launch page, right? So instead of having to create a new ticket or a new card to be able to facilitate that, you can simply just use the same card because they're working now across teams of teams to deliver this new product launch page. So to facilitate that, I have brought in this product development team's Scrumban board from their team level collection. Very easy to bring in boards from other teams' collections to be able to do this collaborative planning across multiple teams. So in this case, all I'd have to do is maybe drag and drop it down. I can do this directly from the card to their board, maybe on the card, put in maybe a task for what they have to do from their perspective. Something like this. And then back here, if I open this card, you can see that it now exists in 4 different places, and it's the relations panel up here that's making it very explicit and concise, easy to read exactly all of the places this lives. So now it's also on this product development team Scrumban board, and you can see that from their perspective, it's currently at selected. And you can even change those statuses directly from here if need be, like so. So that, in a nutshell, is a high-level overview of the new Favro Relations. Back to you, Patrick.
All right, thanks. So now over to the new Agile Dependencies, which is visualized in Favro in the same place as the relations. Again, I'll quickly share here to do a very short intro to that. So when it comes to dependencies, most people are familiar with the kind of dependencies you have in a Gantt schedule. And this basically goes back to 1910 and Henry Gantt that we can see in this picture. And we have to remember that this way of doing project planning has worked very, very well for a long time. If you're building a bridge, for example, any kind of project which is very linear and predictable, this works great. The problem that happened, within software development and really, happened in the 90s was that, all that kind of complexity and uncertainty in those projects made this product management style basically break down. So it just imploded, and there was a need for something else. And this was, the birth of, agile methods, and the most famous are probably, methods like Scrum. Now, what's been happening here more recently is that it's been starting to cross over into the whole organization, as I was talking about before. And in Agile, the way that we teach how to handle dependencies is that you organize around these dependencies, and secondly, that you take dependencies into account when you prioritize your product backlog. But the problem, is that you might still have a need for a dependency to be highlighted, because you might have dependencies, let's say between these teams. So between the teams, or if you would like to call it between backlogs, you might still also have these dependencies. And to be able to handle this in a way, but without all that negative stuff that comes with the old-fashioned way of dependencies, you can now use Favro dependencies, which we simply call Agile Dependencies, because that's what it is. And we will now show you how this works in practice. Back to you, Jon.
Okay, so this is an old school Gantt chart, and this is exactly what we're trying to get away from. So Favro Agile Dependencies in Favro are not this, right? So as everybody says, the only person who even understands this is the person who created it. And that's obviously not what you're looking for when you're working towards business agility, that whole idea of collaborative planning, especially across teams of teams. So instead of that, I'm going to take this same marketing team board as an example, And I'm going to switch this because the boards can be seen in multiple ways. I'm going to switch this from a Kanban view to a timeline view of those same cards. And I'm going to start out by showing you how easy it is to add these Agile dependencies in Favro in a very visual way. So prep webinar, for example, I can say, okay, let's add a dependency here, an after dependency or a before dependency. We're going to make it an after dependency. And I can simply highlight the card in the same board, right? And I'm going to show you how I can do this across teams in a second, but on the same board, just as simple as this. And now I've created this very visual dependency. I can click on it. I can switch the direction. I could go to that card, even if it exists in multiple boards, directly from here. Now, if I open up this prep webinar and switch from the Relations tab to the new Dependencies tab, you can see that Agile dependency here that we just created visually at the top of the card. If I mouse over, I can see that card, that dependent card, product banner ad. I can see, of course, what board it's on. And I can also see how many different collections that board exists in. And of course, the status, the current status of that particular dependent card directly from here. Now I can also add dependencies in a non-visual way, so to say, up here directly in the dependency panel. If I click add before, for example, let's say this is going to be a before dependency. And if I add that and close the card, you can see that visually here on the timeline. Open it back up, and same thing. I can see the board that it's on. I can actually see the card in line without having to go to it directly. I can, of course, go to it if I need to by clicking it. And I can see all of the collections that board exists in, and I can also see the status of it without having to go to it. But probably the most important thing, as you see here, is being able to have the conversation to resolve this dependency as quickly as possible directly on the card related to each and every dependency like this. Being able to jump back and forth very quickly in this built-in comment stream on each of the cards and see this from both directions. Hopefully resolving, as I said, that dependency through the conversation instead of through a visual spaghetti of an old school Gantt chart. Now, this falls directly in line with one of the first Agile principles of people and interactions over processes and tools, which is exactly what we're going for here with this new implementation of Agile dependencies. Now, if I close this, what if we have a dependency from another team, as Patrick called out, different backlogs or different teams working in tandem together, but maybe having dependencies across teams. So to facilitate that, maybe say this update product page, we need the new content management system to be fully launched before we can update this product page. So we have a dependency on another team, maybe a development team or again, an IT team. So I could click this, say add dependency, before dependency, and then navigate anywhere else in this organization in Favro. And I'll open up this product folder here and navigate to development team 1. And we can see that launch new CMS is currently in QA review from their perspective. And I'm going to click here to create that dependency across teams now. Now it creates this visual stub indicating that this particular deliverable launch new CMS is causing a block or an impediment or a dependency to update product page. And I can just see that very quickly just by mousing over it. I can click it and I can go directly to the card on the other team's board to see more details. Or I can click the card itself here, the card that's causing that dependency, and I can see, okay, this is that card. I can mouse over and see what I'm maybe potentially slowing down. I can see the board that it's on, and I can see all of the different collections that board exists. And then I can go back to that card just like so. and then see the dependency from this team's perspective. Again, that visual stub. If I mouse over it, I can see that we're waiting on this launch new content management system from that particular development team. Now we can also see these dependencies in a visual way, not just on the timeline, but very uniquely also in a Sheets view like this. So again, I can mouse over the dependencies on either direction, the before and after, and see those dependencies very quickly like this. I can click on them, go to them, switch the direction, even in the Sheets view, and also in the Kanban view like this. So there you have it, a nice high-level overview of Favro's new Agile dependencies. Back to you, Patrick.
Cool, thanks, John. So I just want to highlight, two things here. So, one is that, imagine that you're entirely new on a team, you just get recruited, and you can simply just look at the work that you have in front of you and see, okay, how is this connected to everything else? It's kind of cool. And, the other thing that I really want to highlight here is that when things are working in this way, like it does in Favro, it means that you don't need to have a single person or a central unit that knows everything, because organizations are naturally very organic. Things move all the time, and change all the time. Not even the CEO has full control of what's going on in an organization. It's a very, organic beast, so to say, which means that it's very powerful when each team within this are able to themselves find out what they need to know to align with objectives of the company, with other teams, etc., without having to rely upon this kind of one person or central person or unit that will tell you and dictate how things should be done. And that is the key to true business agility, and that will take a lot of pain away from all of your organizations that are working from anywhere in a hybrid setup. But it's also giving you a competitive advantage over all your competition, because you will be moving in a faster way and be more adaptable to all the change that happens in your markets. So with that said, thank you so much for tuning in, and if you have any questions, just ping us. Remember that with Favro, it's not only the tool, it's also the relationship. And we have something we call Favro Academy. We have product and agile experts, and they will understand the kind of questions you ask, even if it's pretty advanced best practice questions around agile practices or OKRs or whatever. So give them a test. So hope to hear from you soon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.